senior UX designer and researcher with a startup here in Vancouver known as Rocket Plan Technologies. I am not a UX writer. I'm a researcher, but I do a lot of creative writing, and I'm a very obsessive poet at heart. So words are very important to me, and the power of using words to change experiences and to adapt people's understandings to where they are and what they're doing has always been this like fascinating thing for me. So in time, I have been building some skills in UX writing, and it's definitely something I'm very excited to talk more about today.
I love it. And I love the fact that each one of us seems like all coming from a different sort of like specialty. I'm going to briefly introduce myself. So my background is, I'm coming from creative background. For 10 years ago, I started with branding. So there was a lot of like tonalities for branding, writings, etc. And then I'm not a writer. I work with copywriters. And
Suwicha, you've also unmuted.
Yeah. Anyway, oops. So, and then right now, fast forward 5 years. Can you hear me?
Hi.
So, Richard, can you please mute yourself for now?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, anyway, so but maybe like 6-7 years ago, I started to do a lot of apps, and that's when I started to get in touch with like, why is there everyone frustrated because the language, it wasn't delivering the experience that they expected. And in my experience, at least, I mean, probably safe to say, out of all the usability testing, etc., like at least 50-60% of the errors are usually made because copy wasn't clear, it was too confusing, people trying to skip it, all of that. So we are all coming from different perspectives, and I would love to hear every single one of you guys to a bunch of topics that we're going to discuss today. Let's start with the definition of UX writer. So I would go to Greta. Greta, would you please describe to us what is the role of a UX writer and how is it differentiate from other roles such as content designer?
Quite a contentious topic within the field as well. People are struggling a lot with what are we calling ourselves, which is so ironic because this is our job. But there are, some people distinguish between UX writer, content designer, and content strategist. For me, I would actually just look at the job description that, rather than focus on the title, look at what is expected in the role, because before the emergence of UX writer, content strategy was a thing, right? And this is just working with marketing, working with content creators, figuring out what is the strategy for your content and how to show people the right content at the right time. Okay. And then when UX writing came in, it was very focused on writing copy for UI or for user experience. So people try to kind of box it into micro copy or button copy. But the truth is, if you are trying to figure out which terminology to use on screen and you're comparing different things, should I say continue or should I say next? You're actually working on a strategy. So UX writing also comprises a little bit of content strategy. Content strategy might comprise a little bit of UX writing, where you're writing exactly or specifically for the user interface. And then content design, which was coined by Sarah Richards, now Winters, from gov.uk. They did massive content design work. I kind of like this title a bit more because it actually shows that it takes more specialized skills than just writing, and it is part of the design process. So currently I identify more as a content designer, but we do UX writing and we also do content strategy. So I hope that didn't confuse you even more.
Andrew, what's your take on this role differentiations?
You're on mute.
A classic 2020 curse. You're on mute. That's a really good and like semi-loaded question, because like I don't think I'm speaking from a void when I say that UX is kind of plagued with an identity crisis of who are we, what do we do, and what are we all trying to do. So UX writer is, to me, a UX writer is someone they've taken the craft of UX and the process of design thinking, and they've specifically used it to target communication. And it's stopped being about like, what is the visuality of my product? What is the flow of my product? It has been, what is the way I'm communicating to you? What are the words I'm using? What is the tone I'm using? What is the specific set of vocabulary and like lexicon that we're working from in order to like keep things cohesive across an experience, right? And they have taken that specific skill set of design thinking and they've tooled it very specifically in that space. I think back to like brand designers and how they get so caught up on like emotion and expression via like visuals and other different elements that come as a part of their process. And I see a lot of that when I think of UX writing. It's specifically using that skill set in a very particular way in a very narrow form of communication, which ironically is extremely broad, but in the scope of what UX does, they're like laser focused in one area.
Yeah. Oh, this is so interesting. I love this because I constantly seeing different people's title. They have UX writer and / content designer / something else. But sometimes when I ask more, like for example, I had a chat with a UX writer in Atlassian a while ago, and I asked her about her role, and she goes like, do you want to find out more about UX writing or content strategy? Because they're two different full-time role at Atlassian when it comes down to when it's at a much larger corporation enterprise size, they tend to separate their roles. And I would say for smaller business, small, medium business, they tend to favor a bit more all-rounders, like a little bit more strategic. I would say more heavy, like quite one of the key things, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the key things to make a UX writer or content designer a good one is the level of research and the different techniques that they utilize to research to lead them to a specific outcome. Would you say so? Because Andrew, your research is your thing, isn't it?
You keep pulling out good questions like this. I'm going to feel like I need to be way more prepared for the next one.
Everyone knows.
Can you?
I can kick it off, and then you follow me up, Andrew.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm running on an existential thread off of that, so I'm like, hold on.
Yeah. So I would say for sure, the word people and the research people make a great team because it actually comes quite intuitively for writers to sit and try to listen and figure out the words that the users use. So the more we're included in research sessions, we don't necessarily check, oh, could they find the button? For sure, that's important for us. But we also listen with like little nuggets that come out when they say one thing but do another thing, right? So did you notice the user there said tap, not click? So maybe in our instructions we should say tap instead of click. So that's useful for us, and like I said, I feel like the research people in the teams usually get the word people a lot more. I wouldn't necessarily say what makes a good writer is the level of the kind of research that they do. I am almost like it's a little bit more art than science, although science does play a big role in it, especially when it comes to UX. You can't just like rely on poetry to help people to get the task done. But strangely, it does come quite intuitively to writers, as I mentioned. Like the people who find these roles are already good at writing quite clearly, and maybe if they come from something different like copywriting or journalism, maybe they need to learn a little bit more about UX. But I would say what makes a good writer is constant like understanding of the end user's goal constantly. What are they trying to achieve? And then what is the business trying to achieve, and finding a way to bring those two together. That's what I would say makes a good writer.
I agree with that pretty strongly. And I'm gonna like riff off of that. And so to give a bit of delineation with this, right? I think good UX is based on good research.
Yep.
Right. I think bad UX is based on UX that isn't research, which at that point you're a glorified graphic designer. You're not a UX person if you're not doing research. My opinion, my humble arrogance.
You might be biased.
Just a little bit. So in that regard, any UX work, the more research you do, the better it is, in my opinion. But escaping from that, just like technical phrasing, oh yeah, definitely a writer at heart if I'm talking that way. I think what makes a UX writer, what differentiates them, or what really shows growth or shows the capacity for it, how much do you write? Because I think I think writing is a craft. It is an art. And it's the thing where it's like, you know, you see those beautiful artists on Instagram, like, wow, how did you do this? And they're like, practice. Like, oh, you're so talented. I could never do that. And like, no, if you practice, like, no, truly, there's no way I could be that good. And they're like, I have picked up a pencil and used it more times than you have thought of pencils in your life. Right? That's why I'm good. Writers are the same way. We write, and we write incessantly. And that, I think, is like, if I see a UX writer on LinkedIn, they're like, oh, I'm a UX writer. And I go look at their Medium or I go look at anything else and there's nothing there. I'm like, okay, sure. Maybe you're writing somewhere else. But a writer is defined by how much they hone their craft.
Yeah. And I think that just, if they don't have their work out there, and if they're not expressing their point of view, that kind of just, should I say, you are responsible for building up your own credibility, and you need to find a way to do so.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, amazing. So I would say a lot of people here, if you are thinking about transitioning to UX writing, I mean, how do people even get into UX writing? That's a lot of, like, people come to me to ask that question, right? Do they go to the the boot camps, just study general UX as a overall idea thing, still go through that whole Figma, wireframe process? What do they have to do, Greta, to get to become a UX writer?
Well, first you have to realize that this role exists. I feel it's quite interesting. It's like this role finds the people that needs to be in it. When I started out, there were no such, there weren't any courses or anything. There were only like I went to the school of Medium and the school of YouTube. And I actually, so like I mentioned earlier, I started in advertising. So I already had the copywriting on the craft side, but I got really frustrated that we weren't helping people get shit done, right? So the partner I was working with, he had some UX experience, and he told me to look into it. And I had never heard of UX. I had no idea what that was. So this was back in 2015. But when I looked into it, it was like, you know, that angel choir sound effect. I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do. But there were no roles for copywriters within UX teams or UX design teams. So I had to find a way and like really kind of learn as I go, build as I go. I was lucky enough to be in a tech company at the time. So I spoke to the design lead and I asked them if I could be in their team, and they did not understand what the hell I would be doing the whole day. Why would I want to, why would they have to pay my salary all of a sudden just to write a few words? So it took quite a lot of convincing. Nowadays, there are courses for people to do. I know of like there's 2 or 3 courses online that I know people do. I'm a big fan of not spending money. So it takes a little bit more work, but there are some free courses, or not courses, but like daily exercise thingies that you could try. And I would say, yeah, like find a mentor if you can, and just practice. I mean, like Andrew said, the more you write, the better you will get. So really try and test those those limitations. If you think you're a good writer and you can write experiences better, try it out. Find a mentor, get a hypothetical product, work on it, create a portfolio. If you can, do it for free. If you have to pay, there's a few cool courses. I could share some links if there's a space to do that.
Oh, amazing. Yes, please share some links into the chat. And then someone else, Michelle, also shared the link. Michelle currently is doing a daily UX writing challenge, and she's shared a link, which is a great idea for anyone. Just like, I believe even designers needs to write. Like, how do you become a good storyteller if you don't write? I write every day. It's just basically about what I did today to this business. What did I did today? What kind of research? I just like write little summary of what I did. This kind of little thing, everyone can pick it up and just do it. Like there's no excuse. Andrew, all right, big question for you again. I would love to know, how do you, if you can maybe perhaps give us a rundown of how you envision an ideal workflow between UX writer with other team members like designers, PM, developers, and stakeholders. How do they work together usually?
Jacqueline, you scare me with your questions.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. This is good stuff. Wait. Okay, no, we're good. Dog electrical cable, not good. How do I envision a UX writer amongst a UX crew? So a writer is someone who should be engaged very early in the process. And that's primarily because the way we talk about our work dictates our work. And if often we, at the very beginning, don't really understand the lexicon of the people we're talking to and the vocabulary of the space that we're building in, excuse my French, but you're a bit damned before you begin. So in that, you need to engage them early, understand how is it people communicate in this space? What do words mean to them, right? Because what one word means to one person can mean something completely different to another, right? One man's trash is another man's treasure. That especially goes with terminology. So in that regard, a UX writer, I would see them heavily involved in the research process, because that's essentially where they're going to get all their material as well, right? That's where they're going to find what they're trying to do, or what they're going to find their inspiration for their work, right? And then throughout the process of planning and artifacting and working towards your lo-fi, mid-fi elements of your work, I think that's where they essentially become a taskmaster. They need to be really clear on everyone, like, hey, you guys need to make sure we're communicating in these ways, right? Don't just use cheap copy, right? Use the correct terms, right? Understand that we're talking about things this way. Use this kind of phrasing when we talk about this stuff, because we need to keep our heads in the user, right? We need to keep our heads in the space that we're building. And then when it comes to a high fidelity, and there's actually like a lot more copy work, that's where I see they really step into their own, right? They're very present in the research. They're kind of almost more of a guardian through the like mid artifacting planning stages. And when it comes to actually building out your product and building out its voice, right? That's when they really step up. And that's where they kind of become the alma mater of what are we doing now? It's like, well, you put some pretty colors on the screen. Colors don't mean shit, right? You need some words. There needs to be a lot of good words, right? And that's where your UX writer comes to the fore and is like, let me handle this. That's how I see it.
Love it. There's so many good points in there. So Greta, do you work with designers and developers in your team as well?
Me?
Yes.
Sorry, my connection. Yeah.
That phone is a little bit far away.
The internet has to travel.
Yeah.
So I work very closely with designers and product managers.
Yeah.
So currently, because the field is still small, the ratio designer to writer is quite low, which is quite stressful. So I would on average work with 12 to 14 designers as the single content resource, which is quite stressful. But yes, the idea is, to get involved quite early, to co-create with a designer. If it's a new feature, the best way to go at it is to kind of start together, write out the process, the flow that you're thinking of, And then the designer can go and do their thing, because you're aligned on what the flow should be, what the user journey should be. The designer can, and you know what kind of content needs to be in each screen, and the designer can go off and live in Figma, and then the writer can kind of craft the words, and then you kind of, converge, diverge, converge, because as a single writer, you have so many designers to work with. Product managers, I team up with, I actually find that PMs really get the importance of content design or copywriting within the product, sometimes more than designers do. I think because product managers really are, they're faced with they see the data, they see where people are dropping off, they have a great understanding of the product, the life cycle, the customer life cycle. So they are great for getting context on what's the problem we're trying to solve, right? So to write good copy, I need to know what we're solving for. So I use product managers for that. And then developers, if you have a developer on your team that has a keen eye for copy, hold on to them really tight, because sometimes they are actually the first responder to copyright. When they're working through their code and they realize there's an error, they sometimes write an error message, or they contact you to write that error message, because they realize, again, they understand that there's an end user involved. And then another thing developers are great resources for is technical feasibility. Sometimes in copy, obviously we want to write the most clear message, right? Sometimes that means giving technical information. So for example, your profile is created, it should be ready in 20 minutes. You want to ask developers, is it possible to show this, to expose this information to our users? So that's where developers are great to have on your side as well.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what else I love about developer and UX writer collaboration is all the edge cases and error state. That's where they shine. And at this point, designer is kind of like at the back screen. Designers kind of design a main flow. They sort of like, I describe it as the iceberg, right? Designers sit above the water. It's all sunshines and rainbows a lot of the times. However, good designers and the senior ones usually go under the water and swimming with the sharks. And so is UX writer, because we need to know all the edge cases that comes along with this package. And we need to make sure that the user gets pathway, and UX writer is there to go, that's okay, you've made a mistake. I'm going to guide you back into above the water again, gently. So next time you know how to guide yourself back to the water. And it's that synergy. It's extremely important. And I agree with you 100%. I praise the developer has a keen eye to design and experience. And generally speaking, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm pretty firm about this statement about the differences about copywriting and copywriters. It's like graphic designers. They write to get attention, get like that impact, instant impact. However, UX writer is about that subtlety. It's about that frequency, and it's about consistency, because the user probably going to come back again and use that same feature, and come back again and use that same feature. So we need to become familiar. And UX as well, it's about familiarity. It's not about being different, but graphic designers and copywriter is about different. We're different. Look at us. This is kind of how I see it. Sometimes people ask me, what's the difference? I'm like, well, it's advertising versus everyday life.
Yeah. So the way I say is like, so copywriting, this advertising world is pulling the person into the product. Like we need acquisition, right? We need those people. But then once they're there, the UX writer and UX designers need to guide them through that experience, right? So now you came, it's kind of like at a restaurant or a club when there's someone outside going, hey, come in, we have this on offer, we do. And then once you're there, you need the waiter to guide you through the menu, to bring you the food, to help you make a good choice. So that's what I always like. People are trying to get shit done, and we need to help them do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is another big question and challenges that I constantly face. I'm gonna go with Andrew because you love the hard questions. So it's become a habit to go to you with all the hard questions, right? How do you work with stakeholder who thinks they are already the wordsmith and they know everything about words? we work with those people all the time. I'm sure everyone has that experience, right? The CEO will come and go, actually, I'll probably call this way. And so how do you back it up?
Oh, I hate these people. Yeah, okay. So there's like multiple approaches to this. One is so I think there's so I'm going to just clarify something. Okay, so I'm working in a startup. Our founders and a lot of our leadership team are our SMEs, our subject matter experts. So when they come to us and tell us, oh, hey, we should really phrase things this way, I'm a bit more keen to listen to them because they actually probably know what they're talking about because they come out of the industry we're designing for. So that makes sense. If you're at any amount of a design agency, design company, something like that, and it's just a CEO going, I really think this is the more correct terminology that I'd like to see in our products. It feels good. Oh, well, sir, would you like to take a seat? Because it's about to happen. So there's a couple approaches to pushing back on bad design and bad words, right? One is something I've done before is I've gone through material that comes out of the industry that we're designing for or the space that we're designing in. I've pulled several articles and then I've word clouded them and then I've searched for the word that person was saying. And I said, have you noticed there's 0 instances of the word you've asked us to use? Do you think this is relevant? Right? And then usually they're like, oh, and then tail between legs walks away, right? Okay, done, solved. That's easy, right? Because you just kind of pointed out, it's like, why do you think that's a good word? Right? And I think that's the second route is literally just ask them why. Right? A lot of times people come to you because they have these brilliant thoughts in their head and it may come from a pretty good place. It's just horrifically executed because they have no practice in actually doing anything that they're talking about. Right? And in that case, you can then validate them and be like, actually, that's a really good idea. That's an interesting thought. I'm going to consider that. And I think there may be a better way to do what you're trying to do because that's literally my job. So let me get back to you on that. I'll take that into consideration, right? And some people just love getting their egos patted in a nice, gentle way and then sent back off to class, right? So that's another way, right? Ask why, get some validation, get some understanding. You'll probably build better bridges that way, right? If you're more into the idea of burning down bridges, then you can just literally get into the point of who are you and why are you telling me what to do again?
Right,
back off. Job description.
I'm trying to do my job.
Right. I'd be a little more careful with the third route. You have to have a really good relationship with them, or you have to be already on the way out with a new job.
Yep. Oh my God. I can tell you, I have actually talked to one of the CEO that I work with at small companies, and they are, very opinionated about how things should look and sound and all that. So I just literally asked him, why did you hire me again? Just please give me 5 reasons why you hire me. Why am I here? So if you need someone to actually do what you need them to do exactly, I would suggest you go for a lower budget, just maybe like a midway or something. But if you need me to help you make decisions, this is my reasoning. So guys, don't be afraid to back yourself up. But if you got to do your homework, like Andrew said, everything you need to be able to go into a review prepared of everything that you chose to go on every screen. Yeah, absolutely. You need to have like a backup sort of validation of why you do certain things. And Greta, what do you think about? I'm sure you have, being the only one writer. Oh my gosh. Your designers come to you, PMs, your CEOs, and marketing people. Have you experienced a lot of I think this doesn't sound right. You should write it some other way.
Yes, and initially the copywriter in me, the advertising, egotistical, creative, in me got really offended. I was like, why? I'm here, again, like you guys said, like, why did you hire me? But interestingly, in product teams, I found that everyone is just trying to do a really, really good job. Everyone just wants to make sure that we put out an excellent product. So I try to, dig into, sorry, can you guys mute?
Hey, Clarissa, you've unmuted accidentally.
Yeah, so I try to really like reach for all the empathy within me and try to, understand where are they coming from and, why are they raising this concern? And I actually want to throw a curveball in here. Sometimes I found that if it's not someone's designation, right? If they're a bit senior and they are concerned with what words you're using, or even towards designers, right? Like, should we use that green or another green? When they're focused on those teeny tiny things, I think there might be a case where they've lost control on other parts of their product and they feel that they need to get a grip on something. So again, I empathize heavily with them. I welcome it. I listen. I thank them for their feedback and their opinion. But I try to make it clear that, the final call still sits with me. I also try, if I can give, and this is broad advice even for designers, is if you are in a situation where there's feedback being given or you're asking for feedback, be very, very clear and specific about what you're asking feedback for and what feedback you will be taking in. Like I would say, hey, hi, welcome to my review. Today we're looking at the customer journey. I would like feedback on the tone and the clarity of this message, not specific word choice, unless there's like a super complicated term that stands out, or if you think something can be said in a shorter way. And then tell the people who are in the meeting, tell them, give constructive feedback, or even better, give suggestions rather than, some subjective feelings or opinions. And then, just reassure them that, you'll take the feedback into consideration, but the final copy will still come from you. And another thing I realized is people just want an expert, like both of you mentioned, right? They want to make sure, it's almost like vetting you in a way as well. So if you can prove to them, like, oh, actually, no, according to our Lord and Savior, Nielsen Norman, this and this and this.
Grandpa.
Yes.
This and this and this. Or I've even done something as simple as going to Google Trends, searching for a term and another term, comparing it and showing them the graph. I mean, it's not scientific at all, and then they buy it. And then they're like, oh, okay, you know what you're talking about. And then these comments become less and less when they realize you are actually an expert. So yeah, I welcome them in. They're probably suffering on another part, so I'll let them have it. But then I still do the final copy.
It's just, I want to give you a hug, Greta. It's like when you were explaining this, and there's so many great practical things that we could all apply to our day-to-day, and not just UX writer, but all designers. It doesn't matter what level you are. Part of your job is about delivering your knowledge and communicating it to your stakeholder and how you do it, right? It's not just about your skill, but the way how you listen, the way how you sort of gently passing your knowledge to your team, so then they eventually become supportive of your expertise rather than against it. Super important. I think when you were talking, both me and Andrew was like knocking our heads so hard our neck hurts.
That was like one of the most value-packed set of answers I've ever heard. If you guys are listening and you didn't write that whole thing down word for word, you are missing something. That was brilliant. I know.
Right. I hope this is, Renora is helping me to like record this, so hopefully we can then rewatch again. Okay, so this is one of the big pressing question. Now, many small and medium product companies doesn't hire UX writer. So I don't know about your side of the world. So I'm based in Australia. We're sort of, I would say, dramatically, we're so far away from everywhere else, and so we're still trying to catch up with the unless it's like bigger enterprise or bigger company. They're very sophisticated with hiring, making sure that UX writer is a full-time job on its own. However, smaller and medium companies, they don't seem to value. They don't even know what UX writer do. They seem to just go ahead and hire a product designer, expecting the product designer to do all of it. So for the product designers in the room who got into that situation, what kind of advice would you give the product designer to make sure that they are equipped to challenge themselves and to do at least just not a perfect job, but like somehow decent job? Greta, you want to start?
For sure. I think if you're a product designer, if you are here in this call to learn, you for sure have this superpower that sometimes I think we take it for granted. We say the word a lot, but we forget that it's there. Empathy. If you have empathy, and you must have a deep well of it if you're here, right? And if you're a good designer and you truly consider your users' need and their state of mind every step of the way, the experience that you're creating, it will come naturally. You will, if you remember that there's a human on the other side of what you're building, it will become much easier to design for that. That's the one, empathy. The other thing I would say is just for 1 hour, close Figma. Just start with, please, just start, open a text editor or even take your notebook and just dump the words, dump the whole experience that you're thinking of in paragraphs, in actual words. Organize your thoughts. This might be more important than the other thing. This might be more. And then you have a blueprint for what you want to design. And you have some dummy text that you can already use without using. And then the other thing I would say is think of the design as a conversation. So what I do often is I role play it in my mind. So this really kind of, even better if you have a colleague or a teammate to role play it with, because you can see what works, what something is missing here, right? If you go, let's use the restaurant example again. So you want to order food and then all of a sudden you're in the kitchen. It's like, no, that doesn't make sense at all. What are we missing here? What needs to come here? So actually playing out like, hello, my name is Greta. I want to order a burger. And then the app will say, that's excellent. Which burger do you want? Right? So you're actually getting a flow. So yeah, those three things: empathy, close Figma, and role play the conversation.
Hallelujah. Oh my goodness. Okay. So now, Andrew, what do you
I'm
think
just gonna
about this
I'm gonna
topic?
secede my step here. She said everything that's important. We're good.
And research, listen to your users.
I mean, yes, listen. If you're a product designer and you're in a role and you're realizing how important copy is, or your company is, you're realizing that it's something the product may be falling short on, there's a couple small things. One, how much consulting budget do you have as a company, and hire on a UX writer as a consultant for a period and get some help from an expert? That's probably a really good idea.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like, hey, look, I need help with this. This is a big weakness. This is a gap we have here. We can fill this gap with an expert. I need to talk to them once or twice a week for a couple months to clean things up, hire them in and just let them help me.
Mm-hmm.
People love getting the best, right? And so if you find the best and hire them into your company, A, you're helping a UX writer get work. B, you're helping yourself learn more. And B, you're building legitimacy for the industry. So those are all really big ones. Use a thesaurus. Like, people don't use that enough. Like, honestly, make a thesaurus your best friend. Every single time you think of a word to describe something, go pick up your thesaurus, open it up, and be like, oh, there's so many different words to describe this. Like, the amount of times I type in thesaurus.com or like a word and then thesaurus, Google is getting sick of it for me. So that's what I would say is, like, make a thesaurus your best friend. Use that as much as you can. And then what Greta said, like, close Figma. Close Figma, people. It is not your life. It is not everything. It is not your job. It just happens to be the most common tool we use to make things these days. Your job as a designer is to get understanding. The core of UX is understanding. And if you don't have good understanding, nothing you do is good. So take some time, walk away from your designs, and talk to someone who has no idea what you're talking about and try and explain it to them. And when you spend enough time doing that, you'll actually begin to understand the power of words better, and you'll learn more about how to do that better for your work.
Yeah.
Like it's those YouTube videos or the Reddit thing. Nice. If it's those like YouTube videos or that the Reddit thing, like explain like I'm 5, Eli 5, right? If you can't Eli 5 what you're talking about, you shouldn't be designing it. That's my hot take.
Boom. Yes. So sorry about my delivery, man. Someone else might need to take over if he rings again. But I'm going to throw in one last question for the host, and then we're going to open up Q&A. Okay. I want to talk about UX writing and accessibility, because it's it's extremely important. I mean, okay, so I want to know from you two what kind of factors to consider, when to consider, and what's the testing and validation process when it comes down to accessibility. And do you want to start again?
Yeah, I was going to say, Greta, you can start. I wanted to start with one sassy thing. Consider that not everyone can use words. That's the first thing. Accessibility means some people cannot use words. So how do you communicate without words? And how do you communicate in writing without words? There are ways to do it. It's just tricky. So that's the first place to start when we consider accessibility, is that we have to get out of the ableist mindset of like, well, how do I use words? Well, not everyone has words, dude. Find new ways. So that would be the first step.
Yeah. And even the way you string words together can complicate things for specific users. So I think the tech industry is very bad at actually catering for accessibility, and maybe ashamed to admit it, but I'll admit it. It's not prioritized enough within product design, even in design thinking, even in your sprints. How often do you go, okay, how do we make these things accessible? From just a general, if you don't have that much authority within your team, or really, you can't prioritize this and put it in backlog or anything like this, I would say the first step, especially pertaining to words, would be just to use plain language as far as possible. Use the most commonly used words. So again, Sarah Richards or Winters, she has this thing about dumbing down content. So people often say you should dumb down the content you make, but it's not dumbing down, it's opening up. It just means more people can understand it now, right? So keep your words short, use the most basic version of that word. Keep your sentences short. And then I would say, I actually have this book that I started reading, Voice and Usability by Preston. So I just started, so I don't have that much insight, but he actually goes into voice content design, right? And how you assist people through their experience through voice. And a lot of great things to consider from this book. Again, like, if a screen reader is going to read everything from the top, does it make sense to have this in the top? Or what's the most important thing? How can we get, again, if a screen reader is going to read everything from left to right, or right to left if you're Arabic, should we put, like, how do we make that content super succinct, super clear? So yeah, I don't have best practices because I honestly have not worked on this enough, but it's just trying to use plain language, trying to consider voice content, like Andrew mentioned. Not everything is, words that people read. And then, so inclusion, does this also fall under? So that's the other thing. I see a lot of gendered copy. especially in this region where I am, like it's still pretty, I wouldn't say backwards. So this food delivery app, the majority of the delivery riders are male. So it would show up in the copy as well. It would say, the rider is on his way. And I would be like, no, make friends with singular they. It's going to feel so weird the first time you say it, they are on their way, or it feels weird because you're just talking about one person, but you get used to it. Just become friends with it and practice in your daily life. Just try to stop saying he and she for a day or two.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the accessibility topic is one of the crucial part where UX writers work closely with developers as well, because you need to make sure that all the images have potentially all the alt text that goes with it. Listen to your design, like sometimes with no images, and I think the best time for me personally, I think when I test content or something, I always test it just on the wireframe stage, like real lo-fi. There is nothing on the page, and I just have brief copies, sort of making sure that when that part goes through and it's no confusion, then almost the design comes in secondary after that. So to me, sorry for all the designers out there, but I praise writers more important than designers sometimes. That's just my feelings, but maybe it will change next week. I don't know. We've got 10 minutes left, so I want to get into some question time. Does anyone have any questions? Throw it out into the chat, please.
There was a bunch earlier, but you've got a lot of chat to scroll through, so let's start from here.
No, guys, if you had a question got missed, please copy and paste it again. Okay, I'm going to start with Esther's question. Do UX writers join product designers to do usability testing or A/B testing for the UX copy show? Yep, jump in, anyone.
Definitively.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Like if you can sit next to the product designer and watch and observe, or even, because now everything's remote, right? You could just be an observer, creepy stalker on Zoom. And A/B testing, sure, it's fine. A/B testing, it's a dangerous one. People rely a lot on it, but I would say like for small things, if you're just trying to optimize, A/B testing is great, but A/B testing full screens, I don't know if your metrics, what are you trying to optimize? What are you chasing? But yeah, for sure, go to the usability test.
Yeah, if your A/B tests are very binary results, right? So if you're trying to get any amount of nuance out of your research, a A/B test is the last thing you should be using, right? I would consider like A/B testing the lowest fidelity of research. But if you want to have a writer involved, yes, a UX writer should be one of the first people you consult when you get into a usability test. As an example, I dare any of you to do a usability test with lorem ipsum copy. I bet cash that all of your tests are going to fail miserably and it's going to be a dumpster fire, right? Yeah. A UX writer should be one of the first people involved in preparing your usability testing, because it is a key signifier in process and flow. So definitely they should be there, and they should also be listening through the whole process.
Okay, amazing. All right, so this one, I think it can relate to a lot of people. Oh, keep jumping. How can you effectively highlight your UX writing in your portfolio? What a great question. What do you think?
So I would, if you can, make a separate project of it. So let's say, because I don't know, it depends, everyone's portfolio is so different, right? But maybe even if it's part of a much larger feature or something, I would highlight it as a separate thing. And honestly, we do the exact same as the product designers. You start with the problem that you were trying to solve. You show all the the processes, the frameworks, and the usability and user tests that you did to get to the final solution that you wanted. So let's say maybe it was A/B testing, continue versus next, or buy now versus check it out. So what exactly were you testing? What exactly were you trying to solve or optimize for? Show a before and after if you can. And if you have actual results, excellent. Even if it's just improving, if you have like something that is quite badly written and unclear, based on anecdotal evidence, people weren't sure what was going to happen on the next page, and you improve that copy, you can just show that.
Yeah, that's great advice. For those of you, let's say if you're trying to get into UX writing, I would say sometimes just be an observer in everyday products that you use and go, hey, I'm using Airbnb, but I think I might want to rewrite this flow, and just give it a little test and see how it goes, and use an existing app if you think something can be improved, Okay, there's this Emma, so ask this question, everyone is like, +1. Okay, to what extent should a UX designer know about UX writing? Andrew, jump in.
Okay, like how harsh am I allowed to be?
Go for it.
If you don't care about UX writing, get out of the industry.
Get out. You're gone.
That would be like the hardest take on that. Like straight up. If you don't think writing's important, you're in the wrong line of work.
Yep.
Andrew, you're my new hype man.
I'll call your stakeholders for you. But yeah, straight up. If you don't think it's important, then you just don't get it. Love you, but no.
So I think I feel the same. It's not always easy to kind of utter that sentence, especially if you're the only writer in a team. And I think managers also are not, they're still getting used to managing UX writers. They're trying to incorporate UX writers within the team. So oftentimes I find myself, I want to tell designers, like, this is not my job. This is your job. You have to see yourself as an experienced designer or a facilitator of an experience for the user, right? If you see design as your job and words as my job, that's broke. The user doesn't see it like that. The user doesn't go, oh, nice picture. Anyway, they're like, they see the screen. So although I fully understand, if it's not your expertise and you also don't really care to learn the craft 100%, that's fine. I don't want to learn to code either. But some extent, just like you guys, a few years ago, the hot topic was, should designers code? Just that much that you learn HTML so that you could have a conversation with your developer or engineer. That, like, just show interest, show that you're willing to understand so that you can have that conversation with us. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then just once again, for everyone who is here, product designer or a UX designer or whatever, UI designer even, like, everyone needs to start writing something every day, every week. It's your communication skills. If you don't have high level communication skills, I mean, you've got a long way to go.
You.
Yeah. For anything, presentation, you need communication skill. The way you draft your case study. I don't want to read a whole big book, right? Like, so instantly your storytelling skill is poor if you don't know how to prioritize all of that. So everyone start thinking about, how do you tell your story? Write it down, pick up a pen, get away from Figma. We've got 3 minutes left. I'm going to see if any summaries out here. How do you maintain a single source of truth for writing? Oh my God, that is such a great question. Across document, Figma, code, it can get messy. Yes, it can. Greta, how do you maintain source of truth?
It can get messy. Thank you for coming. So there are, people use different methods. So there aren't many tools, I feel, that have really, caught up to this idea that there are also writers using design tools. So how we've handled it in previous teams is to have a master Figma file that's always up to date with the latest copy and design. That's one. The other way I've seen it work is in a spreadsheet, which is actually quite okay because you also want to localize, you want to translate eventually, so it's fine to have it in a text editor. But then it links to the screen on Figma as well. So every string exists with its link to the Figma screen with its translation, which can also still get messy because, who updates those, how many people have access to it, how many people can edit it. So I would say whatever documentation you use, have within your strategy and within your processes, have, a cadence of when you're updating it, when you're checking it. So governance, as we call it. Is it weekly? Is it quarterly? Is it monthly? Do you just go through it and check and make sure everything is up to date?
I actually take it out of Figma personally.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of people that use what UX writers put together. Like the resources you guys use to do your work is incredibly valuable to many other parts of the business. Like marketing wants their hands all over that stuff, right? So for me, the first piece is I start a lexicon of myself. I start documenting every word and what it means and what derivatives of that word are and how are they applied, how are they important to the user, how are they important to X stakeholder, blah, blah, blah. I document all that. And usually I'll do like a giant mind map of words and how they come together. And then I also just have like a long either Notion or Dropbox paper, Google Doc, something where it's just an infinite list of words, which will look boring as hell to anyone else, but to me it is literally a gold mine.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so great. You know what I do? This is probably, I invented this and then I think it's probably only working with my team. Currently, I'm loving this process. So I think I don't want anyone to come to my Figma and leave comments. I'm like, no, this is my space, get away. And then so this is me and my team's precious little zone. This is our playroom, our sandbox.
You can't sit with that.
No, I can't. I separate. And so then I'm like, okay, when we get to a stage where we're ready. So for example, we've got usually at mid-file level, that's when Figma kicks in, right? Mid-file level, we'll do a Figma thing, then we sync it to Mural and link all the screens together on Mural. So Mural is so accessible to every team, accessible to marketing team, dev team. They all jump on Mural. They can get it. It's just so intuitive, right? They don't want to jump on Figma and go, oh shit, where do I do this? Oh, where do I draw a square? Where do I get a post-it? Like, no. Sync it to Mural, and you can go nuts on comments on that road. So when I'm designing, I don't want to see people leaving comments because it's so distracting, for one. Number two, when it's on Mural, I color code the type of comments. So I make my entire team follow the color codes that are assigned. Yellow means design, green means copy, and black means tech-related comments. And so each team can then just go into the specific color. And so we don't waste time fiddling through 100 different comments all in yellow and go, which one am I actioning on, So that's my little weird process.
I am so in love with that, honestly. To me, in my opinion, like Miro is the true nexus of success for design. Yeah. Like it should be the real space that we do our work because it is actually usable by everybody else. Novel thought, design being accessible.
Yeah. And so UX writer, unfortunately, the true source of truth will be fine. They still have to punch in the final copy into Figma and then we sync it back into Miro. So like that. But however they want to craft their copy, that's their own space. I have no say to that. But eventually,
if it wasn't like for the last 2 weeks where I did some work in Figma to like accelerate some of our production, I haven't opened Figma for 9 months before that because I don't use that shit.
I want to watch you work, Andrew.
I'm just a very lo-fi person, okay?
Thank you so much. Oh my God, I'm loving chatting you too. Can we
Miro
please have
people.
a 2.0? We have to have a little follow-up 2.0. Everyone's loving it. And I think it's going to be like, because there's a lot of people missing this session, different time zone, etc. So perhaps let's get together and do a 2.0 and see how it goes. Thanks everyone. And thanks Winona for helping me do the logistics stuff. I hope you enjoy your whiskey and while listening to us rant about everything in life. Andrew, I can't say thank you enough for just taking on these like crazy questions. Greta, where did she go? Oh my God.
Where's the lady?
I'm here.
She's here. Oh my God, Greta, I want to give you a hug. You guys, I feel like I'm so close to you guys and I hope to like chat to you guys again soon. I'll organize another session and let's do this again. Thanks,
Amazing.
guys. Have a lovely week. I really appreciate everyone's time, and I'll chat to you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye safe.